in the last column here, you will find that from 2009-10, when we were having a quantitative export of 6,78,000 tons, that has now grown to almost 70 lakh tons, as even Dr. Karthikeyan mentioned earlier today. And then value-wise, from 2009-10, we had only 10,000 crores of export of $2 billion US. That has now, last year, registered a figure of 64,000 crores, and with $8.1 billion of export. So the growth, as you know, has been phenomenal. In terms of rupees, it is 600%. In terms of US dollars, it has been 400%. This kind of growth has been not seen by any other export sector in India. And also, in the agriculture products sector, I think this is the highest. So now, also you'll find, go to the next slide, please. You'll find international market-wise, you'll find that in 2009-10, Japan was a very dominant force. Of course, the leading was European Union then, and then China was following European Union, and Southeast Asia too. That was in 2009-10. But today, you'll find that in 2023, that USA has taken the lead, and they are almost 40% of total exports, US, of Indian exports, and then followed by China, and then by European Union, and then by Japan. So that table has totally changed, and I think that will continue for quite some time to come. Now, there has been a shift in the markets due to various reasons, as we are following up. Now, you'll find that in the international market, India's export basket is dominated by shrimps, constituting almost 70% in terms of value and 30% and 40% in quantity terms. The maximum focus, therefore, is on marketing of shrimps, with the advances made in shrimp aquaculture, with production having gone up from 70,000 tons in 2010 to almost 900,000 tons in 2022, or even more, if you take the domestic things also. India is able to comfortably market the non-shrimp items to all countries. That's going on pretty smoothly. For low-value fish like ribbon fish, croakers, and so on, India is almost exclusively dependent on China. Yeah. Next one. Total US market for shrimps is about 850,000 tons annually. India supplied in 2021-22 almost 375,000 tons. 44% of US requirement was supplied by India, which this dropped during the subsequent year in 22-23 to 300,000, a drop of almost 25%. This was mainly due to Ecuador increasing the aquaculture shrimp production and supplies to USA at cheaper prices. India substituted this drop in US market share by increasing exports to China, Europe, and other countries. Yeah. Next slide. Now, when you come to the domestic market within India, domestic market presently is very active for fish. In fact, domestic prices for fish are better than international prices for many species of capture and culture fish. Domestic market for shrimps needs to be tapped through effective marketing and cold chain infrastructure. In fact, 30% of shrimp production can be absorbed by domestic market. Indian market for shrimps is quite huge, particularly in the internal heartland of the country. So, but it has to be reached there. It has to be marketed to those places. And definitely, if that is tapped properly, we can have at least 30% of our product sold domestically, and that will reduce the pressure on marketing of ships abroad. Yeah, next one. Now, we have certain access issues in international markets. US was the largest importer of frozen shrimps from India. Since early this year, Ecuador, which is nearer to USA, early last year, I would say, with considerable logistic advantage on costs and deliveries, has increased their production of aquaculture shrimps from 400,000 in 2017 to 1.3 million tons in 2022, and is dumping products into US market at far cheaper prices with all guarantees to US FDA and so on. Indonesia also has been dumping product at very cheap prices. Both these countries are not in the anti-dumping duty radar of USA, whereas India is. It has a duty of 2% or more, and this has been so for the last, since 2004, we have been on an anti-dumping list. Recently, very recently now, I think this is the latest news. The unfair CVD, countervailing duty proceedings, initiated this month by USA on shrimp imports from India. It is also applicable to other countries. They are for Ecuador, Vietnam, and Thailand, and Indonesia. India is likely to be, this is likely to be another major hurdle unless this is contested very strongly with realistic, convincing data submissions by the Indian government and trade. Now here, this is really, in real terms, if you look at the WTO regulations and all that, those items they have listed as supports to the Indian marine product business are not supports from the government. What we are getting now, the rod tap or the drawback is only a reversion of the internal duties. The international rule is taxes cannot be exported. So the domestic taxes, which are being reverted through this drawback and rod tap schemes, those are the essential things that we are talking about. And there India is getting 6%, Indian exporters are getting 6% between two of those schemes, and these are only reversion of duties. So we are going to contest this very strongly, and let's see how that goes. Then the freight from Ecuador to USA is half of the freight from India. Added to that, the internationally resident trends and so on. As a result, the prices have dropped. Yeah, to US. Next slide. Aage chalao bhaiya. Yeah. Then other access issues are in the EU to Europe. I think this is a barrier. It's not a. It's a barrier. We are exporting, our shrimps are very much required by the EU market, but then they brought in for antibiotic residue detection. They had delisted 14 companies 15 years back. This is not in the EU rules also. It is not in their executive instructions anywhere. But still they listed. We appealed at that time and then they stopped delisting, but they have not delisted the companies. And they increased the sampling to 50% of the product, whereas the norm is 10%. And that this still holds. Then India has got some of the best processing units in the world. So newly approved EU processing plants for export of aquaculture shrimps by Export Inspection Council, which is the competent authority of Europe. Those which have been approved have not been put on the EC list by the EC authorities for import into Europe. I understand recently there has been a development where some of them now are being allowed to export, but this is still not completely done. Now, this was a very unfair practice, and NDB, our government, of course, MPDA, Export Inspection Council, everybody took it up very strongly with the various authorities, and over the last 5 years, 5-6 teams have come from Europe, and they have seen for themselves, and I hope there's going to be relaxation once an FTA with Europe is worked out. The FTA with Europe also is an issue. It has been lying pending for many, many years now. So if that is put in place, maybe most of these will be convinced. Next one, please. Then we have with other countries, exports of shrimps to South Korea, Saudi Arabia, China, and other countries are facing a barrier due to the insistence on white spot syndrome, WSS, not being present in the product. Now, WSS is there in other countries also. According to WTO rules, those countries who have got a particular pathogen in their waters, they cannot say that this should not enter their country. But anyway, that is something which we are trying to do. Go to the next one. Next slide. Aage chalao, yeah? EU and UK should address the issue of duties on import of marine products into these countries. The duties on import of marine are very heavy in those countries. So we have been telling our government to bring a policy of 0 to 0 for these countries. We are not using cold water shrimp. We are not using those shrimps from Europe. And why there should not be a 0 to 0 duty? For all import of shrimps today, the duty is 30%. So if you make it 0 to 0, it will convenience a lot of things. Today, our duties into Europe are 4% for 4 to 6% for raw and 10 to 12% for value-added products. Whereas our competitors like Thailand, Bangladesh and all that have got 0% duties. So that's a big barrier for us. So this we have to work out. So next thing, sir. You go to the next slide. And again, in Russia, they have approved 70 Indian processing plants. So if we want to add any more, there is a kind of slowdown from that side. And this again, we have been pushing our government. I think there seems to be some opening on this. But right now, Russia is a very good market, which we have to tap. Yeah, next one. Now, how do we deal with these issues? We have to finalize our FTAs with Europe, UK. UK, I think, has been done. Europe, South Korea, China and other markets. FTAs have to be worked out. Whereas other countries like Ecuador and all that have worked out their FTAs with those countries and they are having a better access to these markets. Now, we have to pursue with the US government to have a uniform anti-dumping duty regulation. We have to contest the CVD proceedings as I earlier mentioned. The SPS NTVs in USA to be firmly addressed by the Indian government. They are at it, but we have not totally solved the issues. Shrimp aquaculture systems to be improved both for production and productivity. Residue issues in markets of US and EU to be seriously addressed in India. This is a very constant effort that's taking place. Those issues have been brought down, but still it is there. It has to be totally eliminated. Next thing. Very importantly, the market size for shrimps in USA has to be increased. As I think in the earlier session, somebody said that the total consumption of shrimps per capita in US is 4 to 5 pounds or kgs, whereas the total consumption of fish is 20 kgs. And whereas the consumption of meat is 120 per capita there. So we have a big room for improving the size of the shrimp market if we do effective marketing there, combined with all the other countries. So I think that has to be looked at. Next one. Next slide. Of equal importance, as I mentioned earlier, is for the Indian government to effectively tap the domestic market for shrimps. Now actually, Fisheries Ministry has got a big budget, and from that budget they should earmark every year a marketing budget of 200 to 300 crores for marketing domestically the shrimps. Why I say figure looks high, 2 to 300, but unless you do that and reach out to the heartland and also build the cold chain facility, I think you will not be able to achieve the targets. So we have to really focus on that. Next slide. Yeah, the backward linkages, the residue issues, market of USA to be still here. This, of course, conservation measures on capture fisheries. Now here, our capture fisheries, we have got a good fishing policy, but since it's a subject on the concurrent list, in many of the states, these are not being implemented as is envisaged in the policy. So there is a situation where juveniles are being caught, where there is overfishing in almost all the other areas, and it is really languishing. So our fishery sector, with conservation and sustainability measures, I think it can be restored to its, and for India to become the leading fishing nation in the world, I think this is a very important thing that has to be addressed. Next one, please. Now we have problems in aquaculture in the primary production areas. Unhealthy seed due to non-SPF rootstock used by unapproved and few approved hatcheries. SPF rootstock, with great difficulty, we got that policy done, but some of these issues are happening. The good manufacturing practice is not being followed by farmers who resort to many harmful shortcuts. Not all, a very few of them, but it's affecting everybody else. Then diseases like WSS, EHB, etc. are there. Now, regulatory authorities not acting on errant stakeholders. Now, actually, MPDA is having a very good residual monitoring program, but that is not being, the results in that are not, no action is being taken on any primary producer. Now, what's the point in having a monitoring plan without any action being taken on the primary producers? So, we really, they are going scot-free, okay? Next one. So what is the impact of all this? We have a threat of ban in EU, threat of closer monitoring by FDA on those residues that we are, markets getting shrunk. So all these, we have shipments increasing to cheaper markets, exports losing heavily on such rejections. So all these issues are coming up. Next please. So all these I've already told, most of them have already been there. So yeah, go to the next thing. We have to encourage broodstock of the native species. These programs that we have, Monodon and Indicus and all that. Now for capture fisheries, as I mentioned to you, the following conservation measures are necessary. We have to ban juvenile fishing very strictly, even with very strict measures of putting people behind bars and all that. We have to ban pair or bull trawling. Strictly implement fisheries policy, particularly conservation measures. Increase the fishing holidays. Strict vigil on unregulated foreign fishing. Diesel costs to be subsidized more. This is a big factor. Or excise duty on diesel for fisheries to be exempted. Very importantly, the entire fisheries sector, both capture and culture, should be extended agriculture status. This is very important. Agriculture status will bring down the costs of production of both aquaculture and the fishing. So this is something which has to be done. Next. Yeah. Lastly, this is the last slide. We all talk of ease of doing business. This is high on the priority of the government. This important mantra of the government for smooth conduct of business is being given a go by in the following areas. Import and re-export of goods and ingredients for value addition suffer imponderably with the SIP and quarantine procedures of the Fisheries Ministry. This is very, very important. This has to be addressed. They are discussing this. This is not addressed despite innumerable representations. We have made, MPDA has made, and the Commerce Ministry has made, all that, but still this is really our import and re-export is a big opportunity for us. China, Vietnam, all of them have really encashed on this, but we are not able to do this. Now, duplication of FSSAI role in quality control initiatives. Our entire quality control is by Export Inspection Council, which is the competent authority of all countries. FSSAI, why should they? They say they will not get involved, but we are having problems at the ground levels. It's really an issue. Now, even the banks, some of our banks, they are supposed to be encouraging us. They don't honor the LCs of foreign banks, some of the foreign banks. Where do we go? And we really have issues on that. There are hundreds of foreign banks. They're all private banks. When our exporters go with those LCs, bank says, no, these are not, despite there have been no issue on non-payment or anything from them. So we all talk about ease of doing business. Government is very serious on that issue. But these are coming in the way of growth of our sector. Not only that, pulling it back. Yes, sir. This is all I had to say. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So next, I think Mr. William Van Der Pich, he is waiting online. I think we'll have his presentation next. Okay. So we'll have Taragan sir's presentation now, please. Sorry, sir. You can have a presentation, please.
Good morning to all of you. I've been, can you just put my point? I've been given 5 minutes to talk about opportunities for value addition in seafood export. While they put up my, I would, before I start, I would like to briefly go into the history of our seafood export, how it started. Actually, in the modern era, one would consider that in the start of our seafood exports was when Mr. Madhavan Nair, in 1966, exported the first ton of shrimps to the United States. But actually, if you go back, the Cochin Chamber of Commerce has records where in 1936, we exported 4,000 tons of dried shrimp to presently what is Myanmar and Malaysia, Singapore, and Sri Lanka. And this was all done by the particular community, which actually had its origins in Kutch. After apparently the Kutch late 1800 earthquake, a lot of the Kutchi Muslim community moved to Cochin, and they started this export of dried shrimp. And it goes back almost, if you trace it back, it's almost 200 years. And when you look at 4,000 tons of dried shrimp, it means 25,000 tons of wet shrimp. So, so one should be aware of this long tradition that we have of seafood export. I'll just quickly go through the various opportunities that we have for value addition. Can you go to the... I've read. No, actually, if you look at, we've had recorded in phenomenal growth in the last decade, achieving almost 20% year-on-year, export growth, which I think Mr. Ilyas also highlighted. The very interesting aspect of our industry is that this entire industry has been nurtured and developed, and even its growth, even today, is by small family businesses. There was no large Indian corporate or multinational that actually brought about this great success story. It was basically coastal family businesses that developed this, that we today, over the last 7 decades. And of course, I must also, here give substantial credit to MPDA for their invaluable support over the last 7 decades. I mean, they played an important role in this growth. You go to the next slide. Now, actually, as mentioned earlier by Dr. Karthikeyan and Ilyas said, our seafood exports is dominated by shrimp. And basically, today, the reason for this growth, phenomenal growth is the success of aquaculture in Andhra Pradesh in the last 2 decades, and which made India a major, seafood player internationally. Today, we have, as already said, we are the largest supplier of U.S. market supplier to the U.S. market, and this is a truly incredible achievement. And over the years, in the last decade, India has built world-class factories. Basically, it's all due to the great success that we've had in Andhra Pradesh. And of course, over the years now, the U.S. has developed as the largest market, as is now the largest market for us. But now we have to, see our market is now, does face a serious threat from Ecuador, which is just next door. And they are now aiming to produce over 2 million tons of shrimp. And there's likely to be, a lot of pressure on them to export. I mean, their market now is only China. But US being next door, they will really look at that market. Now, if you see that, what is actually value addition? I mean, it's a very general term, value addition. But if a value addition would be that what you're exporting today, if you can get a better price by, adding some value to what you're doing. So if you look at today, even head-on shrimp, right, is value addition because you're getting extra value for the head. And all that kind of value addition requires a certain process, a certain skill set, and probably a certain kind of equipment to do that. So look at now Ecuador, as we said, they have a better process probably. But today, we are also, you will be surprised that some of our exporters are getting better price for head-on shrimp to China than Ecuador. So we are there. I mean, it is there. But that is also value addition. Same issue with tuna. Now, we destroy the quality of our tuna post-harvest. The tuna comes out pristine out of the ocean. And what do? We don't have, our fishermen are not trained or do not know the actual process to keep the quality of tuna. End result is that we are landing huge volumes of tuna, both on east and west coast of India. But end result is that, they are getting today $2.5, $3, and the fisherman gets, say, 160 to today's price, to 180 rupees. Whereas all you have to do is, bleed it, chill it, bring it properly, and you're looking at achieving, as Dr. Karthikeyan also had mentioned earlier, you're getting almost $7 to $8. You can ship that loin tuna under this if it's properly processed. So what we were looking at, then the fishermen, instead of getting 200 rupees, we will be able to pay him 500 rupees. So that again is a major value addition. Now, actually, one of the areas that we can take on Ecuador and prevent this threat and keep our market is, fortunately for us, we have world-class factories. We have very competitively priced skilled labor, and we are able to value add to shrimp, which Ecuador cannot. Today, even Ecuador is approaching many companies in India whether they can, because they're finding it difficult with their huge production, whether we can import their shrimp and value add and export. I mean, it's come to that. So we have this skill, and also there is into the US a large market for coated shrimp or breaded shrimp, right? So this market, we have an additional advantage that this coated shrimp is exempt from anti-dumping. So we have a particular advantage there. And now this market was initially dominated by China. China was importing all the coated shrimp to the food service, the retail market in the US. But now China has become too expensive, and China has become a major consumer itself. So a lot of that has shifted now to Thailand. Thailand again, of recent, the labor cost is very high. So now it is dominated by Vietnam. And what is Vietnam doing? They're buying this shrimp from us. We take, I think, 20, 30,000 tons of shrimp is exported from us to Vietnam, where they're value adding and shipping to the United States. So this is something that we can easily look at doing. But processing coated shrimp is not as simple as what we look at. Can you just go to the next one? See, buyers, all the buyers, they're shifting, and slowly they are coming to India because, it doesn't make sense to take the product to Vietnam and they do the product and ship. Better that we do it here because the raw material belongs to us. But some of the major impediments to this is the current regime that we have. I think to a certain extent we have resolved the issue with the FSSI, but AQ still continues to be a major issue. And the total SIP regime. So we need to, for import for export, we definitely need to, the Ministry of Fisheries needs to, delete this entire process of requirement of an SIP. So I'll just come to that again. Just go to the next one. Yeah. Before I go further, calamari, that is squid, is becoming a big ticket item in the United States. Every restaurant has a calamari dish as a starter or as a main dish. So today, you are getting better prices. Before, all our calamari used to go to Europe, some of it for reprocessing, some to Thailand and Vietnam for value addition. But today, US is becoming a major, major market. And we have very high quality, good quality squid. And a lot of that can now go to the United States at 2 to 3 times the value if it's quoted and given. So that's a great opportunity that we have. Yeah, next one. Yeah. Now, the single largest potential that we have for value addition is import of ocean-caught fish, process and re-export to the United States. Now, the international fleets that fish in the main oceans, the Pacific and Atlantic, today all that fish is taken, they store it in Vietnam, and then, in Taiwan or Korea, and from there, before earlier it was China, it was all going to China, and they would then reprocess. It was all back-to-back business by the major US chains, retailers and food service companies. They buy this entire catch of these trawlers, bring it to, store it there, and then send it to either it was China, and still continues a large portion China, but now it has been Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Vietnam has got the larger chunk of this. So what happens is that during the opportunity is so immense that a lot of these companies, because we have these modern factories, we have huge amount of skilled female labor, and surprisingly, if you look at all the countries, whether China, the skilled labor is almost 2.5 times more than us. Thailand is 2 times more. Vietnam is double. So we have this immense cost advantage for reprocessing. Now we've been trying. This business started shifting out of China in about last 7 to 8 years ago, and of course now China has except for a few exceptions, most of it has now gone to Vietnam, and the issue is that they had approached us because we have all these factories. And the great advantage is that if you look at both the East and West Coast, because the East Coast is a little more fortunate because they have aquaculture. But in the East Coast, today we have all our factories, right from Veravel down to Cochin. We have created enormous capacity, freezing capacity. But during the ban period, 3 to 4 months, we are virtually idle. Virtually, our labor is idle, the capacity is idle, and the 2 months fishing ban. Then, if you have extended, like in certain, most of the states, you have periods where the fishermen fishing holidays are there. They don't go out fishing. Now, it is during this process, this periods, that we can import fish and process and re-export. We have everything. The only deterrent is this entire SIP regime. And we have honestly, our association, for the last almost 7 years, we've been approaching to please where we, under an advanced license, import fish and value add and re-export, please do not have the SIP regime. And then they ask us, all right, we were even prepared to take the SIP, but then they had this clause of specific pathogen-free certification by the government of the country from which we were importing. Now we cannot go to FDA or the EU authority and for a particular consignment get a SPF because it's by a government authority. They don't issue such certificates. So as a result that this entire thing we have lost. I mean, even today it's not too late. Hopefully we have been, approaching this. It could, it could be $1 billion business for us. So this is a great, great opportunity. Hopefully, I understand that now there is a concerted move to dispense with the SIP regime. Yeah, and as I said, China has this today. We are fortunate that both in EU and the US market, North American market, you have to now declare product of India, product of China. Whether that if you add 30% value to it or whatever. So they don't like this product. Most consumers are averse to a product of China. So we are fortunate in that because over the years, they have, due to various food scandals, people have a certain reluctance. And, it also highlights, if you go to major supermarkets in India for product today, you take a packet and look at it, shrimp, it's product of India, right? But if you ask, if you're staying in a family and they're surprised that we are exporting shrimp to the United States. So there has been no program highlight that Indian shrimp. We need to do that. That's the job of MPDA, or the Ministry of Commerce to propagate like what Thailand did about the Thai shrimp, being of a high quality. And we can do that now. Yeah, please go to the next one. Yeah, I've talked about SIP. Yeah, this is a... Yeah, also we have, huge... resources of sardine, mackerel, clams. All this today we don't value add. We don't look at it. But if you do what we have actually very successfully done with chill crab. We today export to the United States chill crab. It's at $25 to $30. I mean, $12 a pound, $15, $16, gone up to $18. We are doing that very successfully with the crab. Similarly, we can, everyone thinks like canning is history. I mean, but today you do put in a can and sell it chilled, So these are, almost in fresh form. So we have enormous opportunity here in this particular aspect as for value addition. Right. Next. Yeah, domestic market. I think lots have been discussed today about domestic market. And, domestic market is a challenge. India is a wet market, right? My company, we have been trying for the last 10 years to sell frozen export quality product in the country. Actually, if you look at it, compared to what we export, what we sell frozen shrimp in India is minuscule, is nothing, right? So there's a problem here. We have a problem in the sense that shrimp, there is a reluctance to handle or cook shrimp in the Indian kitchen. The smell, the handling, they don't know how to do it. It's a big issue. So, either some of the, especially in the heartland, they don't like their kitchen smelling of fish. We think it's a very small problem, but it's a major, major problem. Especially with domestic health, they also have this reluctance. So we need to overcome this. Two is a lot of, the concept like even in the Punjab where, we sell probably the maximum frozen shrimp. They all want jumbo shrimp, jumbo. Everything is jumbo. The concept of jumbo, that is, these are, so what we need to do is like either Ministry of, the Ministry of Fisheries should do a campaign of popularizing shrimp in India. Because we have, as Elias mentioned, the Indian market needs to absorb some of our production. So we, for even other seafood products, see, if you look at our Asian competition, they all have a thriving domestic market. Thailand, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, all the Indian Ocean Rim states. They have a very thriving. We, unfortunately, our fish consumption, except for the coastal areas and then some of the internal fish, the lake fishes in the center of India, there is no, shrimp is alien, basically, to the Indian kitchen and Indian cuisine. So even if the price of shrimp is the price, like breast meat of chicken is, today small size shrimp is almost the same price of breast meat chicken, right? They will not use shrimp because if they're given a chance to buy chicken, make a chicken curry or a shrimp curry, they'll choose chicken. So we need to popularize, like the egg campaign, talk about the value of shrimp as a good protein, all that. So we need, otherwise this domestic market will not grow. Of course, there's a West market like this Licious, they've had, and Fresh to Home. They've had some success with, with the fresh market, as in the chill condition. But again, it's by the time they add, it's a high value product. High consumer price product. So we need to look at this because the domestic market definitely needs to absorb some of that. Yeah, and lastly, if you look at, I think what we need to do is today, if you say 30% of our exports can really be considered as value addition. A lot of it is going as commodity, where it's being value added, or So we need to somehow try and reverse this. Like Thailand, it's the opposite. Vietnam is the opposite. So we need to do that, and for that, I think we need to, like NAFAD, they should create a center for excellence for value addition research. They should have all the equipment, all the training. So anybody, because some of this involves very expensive investment, to get into the value addition. So at least somebody, the smaller people can come in and try and do that. So I think the Fisheries Ministry should really put a lot of money into creating a center for excellence for research for value addition. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable inputs on this account on value addition. Thank you very much. So we'll go for the next presentation. I will go. That is, the next presentation will be on Insights in Global Shrimp Production and Trade. That is by Mr. William van der Pitch. Virtual presentation. Sorry for the delay, Mr. William. It was unfortunate that we have. Please go on with your presentation.
No worries at all. Thanks a lot for inviting me to be here today. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Good. First of all, I'm really happy to have been able to listen to Mr. Tarkan and Mr. Said. I think that they have very clearly stipulated that India, at least also in the shrimp industry, is really in a rapidly changing environment where you are competing with a country that is extremely efficient in both modernizing its shrimp production, going from extensive to more intensive, but also in promoting itself as a reliable supplier of high quality, sustainable shrimp. And I always, when I travel to Ecuador, I'm so impressed by how proud the Ecuadorian people are about their industry and how convinced they are that they will win in the market, right? And I'm really happy to listen to Mr. Said and also to Mr. Tarkan and hear all the ideas also work a lot with buyers and retailers from around the world, and the perception of Indian shrimp is not very good, and that is sad to say, right? Because you have a beautiful industry, and I hope that over the next couple of years, the Indian industry will come together and step up its game together with the Department of Fisheries and NPDA to make sure that the Indian industry, you, can be as proud of Indian shrimp as that the Ecuadorians are about Ecuador shrimp, because that is what you will need, in my opinion, to really excel in the future in the international market and have actually that impact on all those hundreds, thousands of people in India that depend on shrimp for their livelihoods. Let me then share with you some data. I only have a few minutes, right? So I will just share with you some highlights of the latest trade data, which will make you better understand what you are dealing with internationally. Do you see my slide now?
Yes,
the
yes.
Slide with
Yes.
Ecuador, India, Vietnam, and Indonesia.
Yeah.
So this is today's situation for the world's four largest producers, right? So Ecuador is clearly today the biggest exporter. This is only Q1 to Q3 data. So you can see that this year, in 3 quarters, Ecuador is already almost exporting 1 million metric tons. That is more than 15% increase year on year in a very difficult market situation, right? With extremely low prices. India at the same time, and we'll look in a bit more detail in the next slides, I think everyone, including possibly yourself, had expected Indian exports to drop. But this year, exports are 2% ahead of last year, and you are almost at the same level, only 6,000 tons below the record year of 2021, when you exported in the first 3 quarters 495,000 tons. Vietnam and Indonesia are falling behind a little bit. They are struggling more to keep up their volumes than India is. And if you add these 4 countries together, you can see that this year we actually don't see a lot of growth, right? So Ecuador increases, India is kind of at level, Vietnam and Indonesia decline, and that means that this year, at this point, we are at about 1.7 million metric tons, with the 4 largest suppliers. Do you see my Ecuador slide now?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, so on this slide you see Ecuador's growth from 2019, and you see how incredible this path of growth was, right? Like in 19, Ecuador exported around 150,000 tons per quarter. In 2023, this has gone up to almost 300,000. So in those 5 years, production almost doubled, right? And they are not yet ready to stop. Expansion in Ecuador is mainly happening due to intensification of farming. So they were at 10 to 15 pieces per square meter. They are now at 25 pieces per square meter. But I think only around 40% of the land has been intensified. So imagine that if they intensify the other 60% of the available land, and on top of that they develop food farming areas, you can imagine that Ecuador could potentially add easily another 40-50% to its production over the next couple of years, if prices and market conditions allow. I think what is interesting is that during COVID, Ecuador's expansion was mainly absorbed by North America and Europe. But last year and this year, the only market that is absorbing more Ecuadorian shrimp is China, right? So I know that Elias, for example, was talking about Ecuador outcompeting India in the US market, but it seems that with slow demand in the US, at least this year, Ecuador has not been able to take more of India's and other countries' volume, right? Well, that's actually not true. I think India took market from other countries, and maybe Ecuador took some market from India, right? But overall, you see that the volume in the US and Europe for Ecuador has remained the same and even falls slightly behind last year. But China, you see that huge increase, right? So China is really absorbing all that head-on shell-on shrimp that's produced from Ecuador. And the funny thing is, what is for you your core and your crowd is for Ecuador leftover, right? Field products and value-added products for Ecuadorian producers is leftover. It's a product that they don't need to make money on because it made the money on the head-on shell-on. So that's a totally different ballgame than you in India are playing. Let me then show you. First. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, let me. But you don't see my screen anymore, right?
We are not seeing your
Can you see
screen.
now?
Yeah, now we can see.
Okay, so I was explaining the upward trend in 2023, resulting in the fact that this year now Indian production is 2% up year on year. You can see that Q4 in 2021 and 2022 the volume dropped. So yeah, depending on what happens in October, November, December, you would expect that also for this year we would see a similar trend, right? Especially if you consider good stock imports, because good stock imports this year fall behind by about 25% compared to 2022, which makes, I think, a lot of the industry people in India think that at some point, sooner or later, we have to see that drop in production. Right, and I think the shared opinion is that probably the fact that this year the export volume is still at par with previous years is that there might have been spillover from last year's production into this year's exports, right? But the problem is no one really knows except the individual companies, of course. But overall, in terms of volume, it is not up here. So if you look at India's export markets, you see that from 21 to 22, exports to the US really dropped, but this year exports stabilized, even slightly improved if we consider the first 2 quarters of the year. China slightly improved, Asia slightly fell, EU slightly fell, Europe, mainly Russia, a little bit UK, and then of course Latin America and Africa are negligible. Right. So the fact that India has been able to maintain the volume has come at the cost of lower average prices. Yeah, so we saw in the beginning of the year, we saw a slight improvement, going up from 750 for exports to the US to around 760, 770. But then over the months up to September, which is the latest available trade data, the average price per kilogram for exports to the US went down to $7.10. And in China, we saw a small uptick from 80 to $5. Have to keep in mind that this line is a continuation of a very steeply dropping line in 2020. Right? So prices as per kilogram are really at an extreme low, especially if we would correct for inflation, which we don't do in trade data analysis, right? But if we would correct for inflation, today's prices compared to 2 years back would be extremely low. So that also explains some of the pain that people in the supply chain are experiencing. But this is across suppliers. This is not an India issue, right? The Ecuadorians, the Vietnamese and the Indonesians all produce at the moment or export at the moment at extremely low prices. A positive note I didn't only want to give you negative notes, is the rise of monobonds. So, of course, the Indian government has been pretty proactive the past couple of years to enable the introduction of SPF bond into the country through with Mopap, but also through Unibio with the foodstuff from Unima in Madagascar. And farmers do find a good alternative. And it is showing in this data, so this is again Q1 to Q3 data for the past 3 years. So you see that from 7,000 to 12,000 to 22,000 tons. And the most interesting thing for me is not even the volume, right? It's the export destinations. Because we always say the biggest market at the moment for monobonds, for peeled monobonds, is in Europe. But that's not a growth market. It's a very stable market where you compete with Vietnam and Bangladesh. It's not a very nice market to be in because it's a heavily soaked, heavily placed market with a lot of cheating. We always say jokingly, please give us marginally less ice and no cheating on the size, because that is the practice in that market, and that's not really the market that you can grow an industry sustainably on. But what you see in the data for especially 2023 is that while initially the growth of monobond was absorbed by the EU, we see this year both other Asia, which is Japan, Malaysia, Thailand, but also China, really absorbing that increase in output, and also the US picking up in its demand for Indian monobond. Right? So I think this is a very promising development. And although, of course, monobond provides smaller volumes than vanillin, I think for the farmers in Andhra Pradesh and other parts of the country, it's kind of an opportunity to diversify when the market doesn't allow them to be profitable going vanillation. Then I just wanted to show you one more positive note. So I think that Mr. Taipan was already touching on it, right? Like India is having difficulties with competing with Ecuador, but if we look at Vietnam and also at Indonesia, in the next slide we see actually that Vietnam really heavily dropping its volumes. Vietnam was primarily for vanillin a value-added exporter, just like Indonesia. Vietnam heavily dependent on the European market for food products, Indonesia heavily dependent on the US market, and it seems that India is able to slowly increase competition due to the investments in value addition, which really provide a very good promising market both for cooked shrimp but also for breaded or coated shrimp, as Mr. Taipan mentioned already in his presentation. So I think this is for the Indian industry a very promising development. Although this competition with Ecuador on the raw shrimp, probably on the value-added shrimp, India still has a lot to gain with additional competition with Asian suppliers. So, Vietnam is really strongly down. It's almost 25% year on year. Indonesia is down about 15% year on year. And that were my slides now. I'm happy to take some questions, and otherwise I leave you to the continuation of your session.
Thank you, William. We'll have the questions at later stage. Now we'll carry on with the presentation. Thank you for your very nice presentation. Thank you very much. So the next presentation will be on innovating to improve competitiveness of shrimp farming by Mr. George Chamberlain. He will be on virtual presentation mode. Not there? I think he's not there. We'll call the next speaker, Dr. Sunil Mohammed, retired principal scientist, CMFRA. Topic will be India's fisheries certification initiatives. Sir, please.
Good afternoon to all, distinguished chair and panelists, fellow panelists, and everyone here. It's lunchtime almost. I thank the organizers for this opportunity to talk about certifications in fisheries, which is again a trade-related issue in the sense that I think both Elias sir and Taragan sir forgot to mention that many of India's buyers of seafood are demanding for certified seafood. I'll just briefly give what is this concept about certification and then go into what are the initiatives that have been taken. Next slide, please. So if you look at the genesis of eco-labels, the certifications are also known as eco-labels. This has come about mainly from the private industry. And it is mainly because of the disappointment with the pace of regulatory measures to curb overfishing and to improve fishery sustainability. This has led many environmental groups to develop alternate market-based strategies for protecting marine life and promoting sustainability. It is, I think, well understood that the government can only play a sort of supporting role in regulating fisheries, and by and large it's quite difficult to regulate. And these environmental groups have promoted a market-based initiative. So these market mechanisms are designed to influence the purchasing decisions of consumers and the procurement policies of retailers selling fish and seafood products, and as well as reward producers using responsible fishing practices. That is, it's an ethical choice by the consumer, especially in developed countries, where people have take the choice that they will buy only fish or seafood which is responsibly sourced, or the fishing is done in a sustainable manner, and it does not affect the stock of the fish. So there are several labels now in the industry. Next, please. The question that we need to address is, do Indian fisheries need certification? We actually have about 4% of global seafood exports, and it is growing. And India needs to be competitive in the global seafood trade, and has to be proactive on seafood eco-labeling, and should aim for certification of its major globally traded fisheries. And therefore, in this effort, the Seafood Export Association has really put their effort into this and have taken initiative to get many of the Indian fisheries which are products which are being exported into the certification basket. Besides, it also helps the country to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal targets, especially SDG 14, which is life under water. Does India need certification? It's a definite yes. And we'll see how we have come to this. Next, please. The way forward would be to accept that maintaining fisheries in a sustainable manner is a necessity for steady ongoing yields and employment from the wild-caught fisheries in India. Everybody knows that sustainability is a key. That is, you are ensuring that in the future years also you continue to get the yields that you are getting now. And we know that throughout the world we are seeing declining fisheries, and also very much in India. So the necessity to maintain yields through sustainable fishing practices is necessary. And in this, Marine Stewardship Council MSC Eco-Label is one of the leading global leaders in sustainable fisheries certification. And therefore, the Seafood Export Association decided to take this label as the way forward to get our fishery certified. And the process is to use a tool called as Fishery Improvement Projects. It's in short known as FIPs. So fisheries which are aiming to get this certification get into what is known as the FIPs. And in the FIPs, the main issue is the gaps in meeting the eco-label standard is identified by auditors, and the fisheries works towards fulfilling these gaps. So next, please. So the certification requirement has many sectors. It's known as principles. One is that the stock should be sustainable. Second is that there should not be any environmental damage by fishing or to other fisheries in the sea, and also the very effective management. So some of the advantages of certification is for retailers and food service sector, for consumers and producers. If you look, one thing is price increases for retail and food service and producers, improved client relationships for the service sector and producers, improved management resulting in long-term sustainability for all the three sectors, better knowledge of provenance of the source. This is about traceability from where this fish is coming from, continued and improved access to markets, to producers, improved public image. This was something which I think Tharagan sir talked about, the US market and all that, and product differentiation and market segmentation. So these are some of the advantages that certification has. The main thing is access to premium markets. So you get a better price for your produce. Next, please. So the MSC, as I said, is a leading global player in fishery certification. And this graph actually shows you the marine fish catch, global marine fish catch. It's stagnating around 90 million tons for several years now. And you can see that the dark blue is the MSC certified fishery catch. And currently, it varies between 15 to 20 million tons, and it's increasing. So about 15% of the global fisheries is now certified or in the process of being certified. And there are also other categories, which I'm not shown in detail. So definitely MSC is a big player in the certification or eco-labeling. Next, please. So if you look at the India timeline, we have started effort in 2007. Actually, the EMPEDA initiated this process, and one of the MSC's chief executive officers made a visit to India, and CMFRA helped EMPEDA to identify fisheries and species which could move towards certification. In 2010, WWF India initiated, along with CMFRA, to certify the Ashtamudi Lake short-neck clam fishery, which is like a low-hanging fruit in the sense that there's not much volume, its price is low, but it had a lot of sustainable practices, and therefore it was much easier to get it into certification. And in 2014, the Ashtamudi short-neck clam fisheries became India's first MSC certified and Asia's second certified fisheries. And in 2015, MSC holds its technical advisory board meeting at Kochi, and the Seafood Association asked MSC to for an India office for MSC. And in 2016, the MSC office started functioning. Next, please. So, and in 2017, CMFRA has a brainstorming and about which are the species and fisheries which should be targeted for certification. And in 2017, again, another interesting thing happens, that is the fish meal industry also starts getting into the certification bandwagon. and it is not the MSC standard. It's a different standard which was then called as the IFORS, or International Fish Meal and Fish Oil Organization Responsible Sourcing. Later it became known as the Marine Trust Standard. In 2018, we formed a trust called as the SSNI, the Sustainable Seafood Network. And in 2019, 5 species of troll-caught shrimp and cephalopods in Kerala undergo pre-assessment and move into a FIP. And in 2020, 3 species of deep-sea shrimp also move into certification. Next, please. And in, I think, 2020, again, the Crab Meat Processors Association starts pre-assessment and FIP for Park Bay Gillnet-caught blue swimming crab, in short known as the BSC, blue swimming crab. In 2022, as Taragan sir said, the USA becomes more interested in Indian squid, and because the interest in Indian squid increased in the US, there are, apart from certification, there are other agencies called as ratings agencies. So ratings are independent ratings of sustainability by other independent organizations. And one such organization in the US is the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And the Monterey Bay Aquarium assesses blue swimming crab and Indian squid fisheries. The blue swimming crabs gets an orange, and the Indian squid is given a red. That's an avoid label in the US market. But based on appeals on an incorrect assessment of the Indian squid by Seafood Association, CMFRA, MBA, that is the Monterey Bay Aquarium, starts redoing the assessment. And I think the process is now complete, and they may issue a new grading for this. And again, in 2023, the fish meal people become more, they also move towards sustainability. Next, please. So if you look at the fisheries under certification, you can see that the troll-caught 5 species shrimps and cephalopods in Kerala, the troll-caught 3 species deep-sea shrimp. Then there is a Persian-caught oil, sardine, and mackerel in Maharashtra and Goa, which is on fish meal. It is using the Marine Trust standard. Then the gillnet-caught blue swimming crab in Park Bay, Tamil Nadu. Again, trawl bycatch aggregate by Omega Feeds, again the Marine Trust standard. And very recently, the gillnet and trawl caught spiny cheek grouper in Kerala and Karnataka, again using the MSC standard. So there are also several other species, next please, which are looking at certification or have looked at certification. One is the trawl-caught threadfin bream for the entire west coast of India, a consortium led by Gadre Marine. It's looking at reactivation. It was active and it's gone out. Port and line caught skipjack tuna in the Lakshadweep. It has completed a FIP, awaiting full assessment. Assessment also, MSC assessment require considerable funds, and therefore it is awaiting this. Trawl-caught spiny lobster in Kanyakumari is interested, fishermen are interested, but there has not been any fund source. Trawl-caught flower shrimp in Gulf of Mannar, Tamil Nadu, initiated FIP, but again has got stuck because of lack of funds. But the MSSRF, MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, is looking at reactivating it. And gillnet-caught oil sardine in Kollam, again, has no funds. So these are some of the fisheries which are moving towards certification in recent years. Next, please. So I will just briefly tell you that there are 3 principles in the MSC standard. One is P1, which is known as, that is the stocks which are being exploited are sustainable. That is, the stock status should show at least it is sustainable. And there should be harvest strategy, rules, fisheries, information, etc. And the assessments, stock assessments, are mainly done by CMFRA and CIFT and the Department of Fisheries. P2 is minimizing environmental impacts because there are other species which are caught along with the target, and therefore these bycatch also need to be sustainably caught. And again, the work is done by CMFRA and Fisheries Survey of India. P3 is effective management, where whether you have the rules and regulations in paper and it's effectively enforced. And this is a domain of the state and central departments of fisheries. And this is, rules and regulations are based on policy. So here also work, especially on enforcement, needs to be done. And of course, because this involves multiple agencies, there's a need for coordination between all these agencies. And of course, funding is very much necessary. Earlier, the EMBADA had a scheme to fund this, but then it actually did not take off, and that, I think, has gone lapsed. So I think the Department of Fisheries has said that there is considerable funds for sustainability, and I hope that the department can take initiatives in this respect. Next, please. So one important aspect of this certification is what is called as auditing or third-party auditing. The certification agency like the MSC or Marine Trust does not do the audit of the fisheries. It is done by third parties. So there is no direct involvement. The certifying agency only develops the standard, and the audit is by other agencies who are actually accredited to a certain standard. So now, currently, our main cost is getting auditors for fisheries from abroad, especially from Europe and North America. And in order to reduce cost, we need to develop our own auditors. And therefore, we have taken steps to train some of our, because you have to pass an exam to become an auditor. The MSc conducts regular training programs along with WWF India. And we have been trying to get several of the colleges and universities, fisheries colleges, to add this in their curricula so that it is actually a very good career to become a fishery auditor. So I don't know how many of the universities and fisheries colleges are aware of this career domain. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. So the SSNI, which is a trust, Sustainable Seafood Network, it provides general oversight on monitoring of fisheries, working towards a MSC label, advice on species, fisheries, and potentials, FIPs. In general, it creates a development consensus on sustainability issues. Its main objective is to get all players onto one platform. So this is in brief my presentation. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Next slide. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think the last presentation will be by Dr. Mini Sekharan. Mini, yeah, please be brief, okay? We are already running short of time.
A warm good afternoon to each one of you. I'm Dr. Mini Sekharan. I'm professor in Cochin University of Science and Technology. When I stand here, I feel like a small fish amidst big fishes. Well, I'll be talking about ornamental fisheries, the trade prospects. Well, strategies to enhance ornamental fish exports from India. That's what I'm going to talk about. Next slide, please. Well, ornamental fishes are very small, yet the business is very huge. Next slide. Well, earlier days, consumers of ornamental fishes were just the hobbyists. But now, consumers are mostly interior decorators, architects, pet care chains, all these agencies. Then demand for aquaria is increasing in hotels, airports, banks, hospitals, etc. So it's no more just a hobbies business. Yes, next slide, please. Well, ornamental fishes also fetch a very good foreign exchange. Next slide. This is a simple fish from Kerala, the river waters of Kerala. Its name is Miss Kerala, Sahyadria denisoni. 20 years back, when this fish was introduced in the international markets, in the US retail outlets, this fish, one single fish, was fetching US $16, one piece. That is the difference between the ornamental fish business and the seafood. There it is in quantities and kilograms and metric tons, and here it is based on numbers. The price was $16 then. Because there were no marketing strategies and all those things, the price came down. One thing what happened is that we are always interested in breeding the exotic, colorful fishes in India. And all our research institutions, what they find out, it was not disseminated for large-scale production for the industry. Well, what happened is that countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, the breeders there started breeding this particular Miss Kerala in very large scale, and they fetched the foreign exchange. And we are yet to tap that market. Next slide, please. Well, if you see the Asian countries, 50% of the world ornamental fish export is from Asian countries. Next slide, please. Well, this is the international statistics. Japan tops, followed by with 11.5% of the world exports, followed by Singapore, Indonesia, Netherlands, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can see Sri Lanka in the 5th position. Well, India stands at 27th position with 0.87%. But we surely have prospect of reaching up to Singapore's, Sri Lanka, but certainly not Indonesia, because Indonesia, they export not only the bred exotic fishes, the bred marine fishes, they do breed the invertebrates, the coral farms, coral farming, all that is done by countries like Indonesia, where we stand far behind. At least we can try to reach the level of Sri Lanka. Yes, next slide, please. If I talk about the Indian ornamental fish industry, we have both domestic industry as well as export industry, and 99% of the, in the domestic industry, 99% of the business is of exotic fishes from breeding sector. And in the export industry, 99% are indigenous fishes from the water bodies of, in India. Next slide, please. The classification, exotic fishes, you can see the colorful exotic fishes which are bred in the waters in India, and indigenous fishes, you can see the colorless fishes which are having international demand. And world over, when I travel, people ask us about the indigenous fishes from India. So there is a large demand in Europe, USA, many countries for Indian colorless ornamental fishes. So there is a what's difference between the colorful demand in the domestic market and the colorless demand in the international markets. Next slide, please. Well, if we talk about the governmental initiatives, there is a huge support to the domestic sector. There are subsidies, financial assistance, technical assistance, capacity building trainings, livelihood support, women empowerment, infrastructural upgradation, marketing. The support has been immense, but it's all going to the domestic sector. DOF, NFDB, MPEDA, state governments, research institutions like CMFRA, CIFA, CIBA, NBFGR, universities, banks, NABARD, CAVIL, NCDZ. Well, now the PMMSY schemes, all it's all very, very supportive for the domestic sector, and that way, domestic sector has grown immensely. We have always been blessed to have the support of MPEDA with regards to the export promotion all these years. But now, ornamental fish export sector was hugely supported by MPEDA. But right now, since after the closing of the ornamental fish division in MPEDA, we feel kind of offended. I was mentioning in the last day in the panel here, and DOF, the head officials have promised that they will handhold us the export sector of ornamental fisheries. Next slide, please. Well, that's what I said. The domestic sector, with all these governmental support and initiatives and the livelihood support, the sector has really grown, and it's to the level of 500 crores and more. So it is not ornamental fish alone. There is accessories, feeds, rocks, wood, and plants. Everything come in this business. Yeah, next slide, please. As I said, in the domestic market, there's a consumer preference for it's high for colorful exotic fishes. There's a retail outlet in India. Next slide, please. Yes, the colorful exotic fishes. Next slide. And of course, there is a niche market for marine ornamental fishes also. Next slide. If you see the breeders in domestic market, they have been given all the support by the governmental support, but they are always interested in breeding the exotic colorful fish. And the aquarium fish production in India is not sufficient to meet the domestic demand. And the breeders in the country find the domestic market demand and the price very high for exotics. So these breeders, they concentrate on the breeding of exotics only. And they prefer to supply majority of the production to the domestic market and never to the export market. Next slide, please. We in India have varied geographical conditions, tropical climatic conditions, which favor year-round breeding, different species of aquarium fishes, which are bred in different parts of India, unlike what is happening in Europe or other countries where they don't have the tropical climate like us, which really favor the exotic breeding. Yes, next slide, please. These are the indigenous ornamental fishes which are very much in demand in the international market. Our water bodies, we have more than 350 species in our own water bodies. Next slide, please. Well, if you see the export consignment, what does it comprise? 90% of it is the indigenous ornamental fishes, followed by exotic fishes in small scale, small levels, then marine ornamental fishes, and there is a huge contribution by the aquatic plants, and the marine invertebrates, marine shrimps, colorful ones. Next slide, please. The most popular, like I told you, the Miss Kerala and Tetradon travancoricus. This is from Kerala. These fishes are not found anywhere else in the water. These are found in the water bodies at Tetradon travancoricus. The smallest puffer fish is found only in our state. So that's all added prospects for the export of ornamental fishes from India. Largest number of export is happening for the Tetradon travancoricus, which is available in the paddy fields in our state. Yes, next slide, please. This is a brackish water species which can also be acclimatized and prepared for exports. Next slide, please. That is Catophagus. So export is mainly based on the wild collection, which is not a sustainable proposition. They have to be sourced sustainably from the water bodies or bred in large scale for exports. Next slide, please. This picture, the previous slide, please. Previous slide. This picture I had taken from a government farm, but again they have stopped that farm also, the breeding facility. The picture I have taken from that. I hope Department of Fisheries and FDB understand the prospects and support in setting up the large-scale production unit for indigenous ornamental fishes are also, which are very much in demand in the international markets. Next slide, please. Well, there you can see the comparison, 500 crore and more in the domestic, and it is 13 crore, and that is because we need a lot more support and large-scale production system. Of course, there is large demand in the international market. Next slide, please. This is a supply chain, which is very, very important as far as live ornamental fish is concerned. We have to export the live fishes, in the water bags with oxygen, oxygenated. So you can see the fishers supplying to the suppliers, exporters, and it going to the ornamental fish market. One fascinating thing is that in the tribal areas, community areas, people don't understand how much this can fetch in the international market. They eat these fishes in their homes. Like the fish I show you, the $16 which was fetched, they eat this fish. So a lot of awareness has to be created all over India about the indigenous ornamental fishes. Next slide, please.
Dr. Mini, can you just speed up?
Yes, sir. So this is a supply chain, picture of a supply chain. We have to be doing in an organized way. Next slide, please. Well, the challenges. I'll just quickly go through the challenges. The export comprises 95% of wild-caught fishes, and we need more of which are from the Northeast and Western Ghats. So we need large-scale production system. Like I said, breeders do not prefer breeding indigenous ornamental fishes as they do not have much demand in the domestic market. And indigenous breeding technology standardized by scientists never commercialized for large-scale production. Increasing of air freight charges after the post-COVID, in a post-COVID situation. And after Emperor closed down ornamental fish division, I said the condition. So we need more supportive schemes for ornamental fish export sector. Then capacity building trainings have to be not only in production. All the trainings are based on breeding of ornamental fishes. We need more marketing trainings also for the ornamental fish exporters and the supply chain operators and stakeholders. And the age-old management strategies for marine ornamental fishes and invertebrates need to be revamped. And ornamental fish breeding is considered as a low investment activity. It's always being talked as a low investment activity, low investment activity. No, it has a lot of prospects, and we need to do it in a very organized way, organized and a biosecure way. Next slide, please. So we need proper layout, organized farming, biosecure facilities. If you see the Asian countries, we have farms which are ISO certified too. Next slide, please. Quickly, we'll move to the next slides. These are our facilities in Singapore. Next. Singapore again. They breed fishes called arowana, which fetches 50,000 to 1 lakh. They all concentrate on their indigenous species. Singapore, all Indonesia, they all breed their own species. So that's why I told you we should be starting breeding our own indigenous species. Next slide, please. Singapore and Malaysia concentrate on breeding arowana. Next slide. This is Israel. Next slide. They concentrate on goldfishes and koi carps. Next slide. Japan concentrate, they have reached the top position by exporting of koi carps, which are the specialty species in their country. Next slide. Next slide. These are systems in Indonesia, large-scale marine systems where there is breeding of marine ornamental fishes and invertebrates. Next slide, please. The same facility. Next slide. Indonesia and Sri Lanka export marine ornamental fish in very good way, and they also train their divers also in a very good way. So that segment is not taken care of in our country. So they train their divers into capturing fish more sustainably. And Sri Lanka is renowned world over for quality marine ornamental fishes as well as quality guppies. So they have specialized. So we also need to specialize this way and we have all the prospects. Next slide, please. Indonesia on Bangai cardinal fish. Next slide. Corals and hard corals are done in Indonesia and all, which is not done in here because of all our export bans. Next slide. Yes, divers I mentioned. Next slide. Next slide, please. This is coral farming, coral restoration, coral farming happening slide in Indonesia. Coral farming. Next slide. This is a export company in Netherlands. Yes, we can do it all. Yeah, in our country also, if done very well. Because what happens in Sri Lanka and Indonesia, we can clearly emulate and we can do in a better way. Next slide, please. Next slide. What is the way forward for Indian ornamental fish sector? So if export has to be enhanced from India, we need more of bred exotic ornamental fishes, sustainably collected indigenous fishes. So the supply chain, sustainable supply chain has to be established. Bred indigenous ornamental fishes and bred marine ornamental fishes. Next slide, please. Well, the export product portfolio to be expanded by freshwater indigenous, freshwater exotic and marine. Large-scale indigenous production unit has to be established. Breed internationally demanded indigenous species for large scale. Scientists may transfer the indigenous breeding technology to startups, entrepreneurs and exporters in India. Sustainable supply chain has to be established before we market, and we need to have stock assessments and as well as quota systems. Policies and management strategies with regards to marine has to be revamped. Capacity building has to be focused not only on breeding, but also marketing and e-commerce. And logistical issues and the air freight charges has to be discussed and reduced. Network with importers through, just like you have your seafood shows in Brussels and Spain and Boston, we have our shows in Germany, Singapore, all are big, huge shows where people like us and the exporters, we visit year after year and we understand the prospects. So we certainly understand that India has a place. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you very much. I'll stop with that.
Thank you, Dr. Mene.
Very good afternoon to all. Actually, the session has extended almost more than 1 hour. We thank all the eminent speakers, Taraganji, then Eliasji, and from Netherlands. He has given a speech, and our Professor Sunil Mohammed sir, and many also. So I will like, I need not reiterate the points what has been placed by the eminent speakers because it's already time. So I'll hand over to the chair, and we'll call the panel members to the dais for winding up the session. Please.
We'll have another 10 minutes for panel discussion. I request all the panel members to come to the dais. The panel members are Mr. Jagdish is there, and also Jagdish Fofundi, Dr. Kamlesh Misra, Mr. Kenny Thomas, Dr. Mini, Mr. Ketan can be in the dais. Okay, please. I'll be there. Okay. Yeah, please. So as I told, we are almost running 1 hour late, okay. But again, this is a very important domain where we have to discuss about the export status, and already the lead speakers have highlighted the issues, the prospects, the problems, and the opportunities. But the panelists can have in very brief way, some of the key issues can be flagged, and the way forward can be presented, and what this particular fora can do for the next for improving this sector. Just we can have a few key issues flagged by the panelists. We'll start from. Can I just say?
Yeah, I'm Kenny Thomas, managing partner of Ginny Marine Traders and exporter of frozen fish. I think the presenters, Mr. Elias Seth and Mr. Tarakan gave very interesting information, especially for the US market. I think there are two ways of increasing exports. One is identifying new markets. And some of the markets that I've researched or studied about are, landlocked countries in Africa, Uganda, Rwanda, Malawi. And we have done some research there and taken some prizes from the supermarkets. For example, 40-60 shrimp from Vietnam, head-on shrimp from Vietnam retails in Uganda for $29. So there is good scope of, there are very, very wealthy people there that are looking for quality seafood. The second thing is increasing consumption of shrimp in various markets, including, our export markets, where we have seen that the consumption of meat is several times higher than of shrimp, which is a better protein in terms of health benefits. And we can see that I think traditionally the markets like the US have been more eating more of, meat for over the years because they were not used to seafoods. Large part of the US, especially which is landlocked, meat is readily available. And in the old days, it was very difficult to transport shrimp before the advent of refrigeration into the interiors of the United States. So it's basically a culture where they eat a lot of meat, and very few households cook shrimp at home. So most of the shrimp is eaten in restaurants. So we need some dedicated campaign, especially hire celebrity chefs like Gordon Ramsay or Wolfgang Puck, and have them do these TV shows more focused on shrimp. And how easy it is to cook shrimp. It is actually, shrimp is much, very easy to cook. It's not such a difficult protein to handle. So these are some of the initiatives that we need to take, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. That was very good insights you have given. Next, I will call upon, you can introduce yourself. And
Good afternoon to everybody. This is Dr. Kamlesh Mishra. I officiate as the President of the Seafood Exporters Association of India, Odisha region. Much has been already spoken about how things can be improved in terms of the export performance, the domestic production, the competition to be faced. I will just highlight 4 points. That's more academic to sound, but that's very relevant in terms of being watchful and take the industry forward. The primary gap is the 4 gaps. It starts with knowledge gap. So we need to have, as Kenny was telling, and all other speakers have told about where all we are lacking and what all information. So information flow for exporters, for the farmers, for all stakeholders in the chain needs to be on a regular basis. It's not like complacency can be of any help. There should not be any complacency. One has to be always in terms of keeping the eyes and ears open regarding what's happening in the global scenario, and accordingly gear up and change the gear to face the situation. Then the standard gap. So whatever standards are there maintained globally, so we need to understand where we stand, where we lack, and we need to breeze those gaps and come at par with the global requirements. Then the next one is performance gap. So we need to understand, as compared to our competing countries or competitors across globe, where our performance is going down and where we can improve the performance. And there is a lot of study being done in that, but action needs to be initiated, and we need to breach the performance gaps. The last one is communication gap, and that's very, very vital. When anything comes up in terms of policy, procedures, rules, regulations, it doesn't really necessarily go out with the best of communication. So that needs to be also taken care of, and the communication gap also needs to be breached. So since it is more of supplying products, which is always a solution for the customers, maybe it is coming from the farm or the natural resources, but as far as possible, we should try to see that customer is at ease and finds that it is really a solution, whether it is fresh, they buy it from the market, which is caught by the fisherman, or farmed in the farmland by the farmers, but it is supplied to them, it is bought from the market. So it's a kind of solution in terms of the delicacy they had on the table. So as it is a product, so solution to the customer, if we are increasing the solution, the value is increasing. Like, I just will conclude giving one small example. There are 2 fisher guys, fishermen, selling fishes in the market. One says, both are charging the same price, but one says that I deliver it to your doorstep free of cost, and the other doesn't do that. So the one who is delivering at the doorstep is doing value addition. So with that note, I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
I'm Ketan Suyani, President of Gujarat Region ACIA chapter, and exporter of the Gujarat. It's a small part, we can say. We are doing only 5,000 crores export of the fish. As compared to our industries, it's very small. But for the Gujarat, we have large opportunity to do the aquaculture. We have done a lot of work with the government also. MPDA also doing very good work for this, because we have 1,600 kilometers of coastal aqua belt, that we can develop also. Another thing I can say, we have a rich resource of the organic food. We can say the natural resources, fish is a natural organic food. We can, it is a low value item. We have to find another market for export also, other than Southeast Asia. Like rightly said, Kenny sir, about the African continental, it is, we can sell to African continental low value items. So we can improve our sea catch production also, and we have to work for the conservation of the sea catch as per the many research institutes, CMFRI, CIP is doing the work for the conservation. Right.
Thank you. I think Jagdish can give the final words. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Neenan, and I would like to extend my thanks to the Department of Fisheries on behalf of the seafood industry for this wonderful opportunity. I think we have all been taken care of very well during this last 2 days, and I'm sure more opportunities will come. Primarily, our Secretary General and one of our esteemed past president from the Seafood Exporters Association have given a very in-depth talk on where the seafood industry is, where it was, where it is about to go, what are the impediments, what are the issues. We have been, because myself and our Secretary General, we discuss these issues on a day-to-day basis. So we have had these issues. I've been the national president for the past 4 years. And we have had some of these issues which we have been speaking to our government, both through the Fisheries Department and through MPEDA to the Department of Commerce, where issues are pertaining to each department. And some of these issues are still persistent, like SIP, what Mr. Tarakan was mentioning, and then of course issues with European Union and issues other than that. So I think we need to address this in order for this industry to sustain, survive and thrive. Most definitely we need to have a timeline on issues and address them, number one. Number two, when Dr. Shayan in his previous talk, when he was mentioning, he was not very convinced with some of the information and data. He was very, very convinced when he gave figures of, the registered units. He was very convinced when he gave figures of exports, because those are information which MPEDA sources through, through means which are more reliable. What I feel, it's a very broad assessment, but what I feel, for any industry to thrive, for any trade to do its planning for the future, we need real-time data and we need genuine data. Sometimes when you look at the production throughout the country, when we say, we feel that Venami is one of the largest species which is being produced. But if you look at the country's production, it is only 1% of the country's production of seafood, of fish or marine. So, I mean, sometimes this information is it's quite confusing. So I think all the academia, the trade bodies, the government, we need to sit together and find some way. I'm not sure if William is still online, but we had a major debate on, we were of the view, or we were of the impression that the export figures from India would go down. I, in my capacity as a national president, was always speaking on behalf of the trade, stating that we assume that the exports will go down, we assume that the prices are falling, but this is all, the data is showing contrary. So I think to get real-time data for us to plan, to produce better quality products, and to assess our markets better, I think that is one thing which, I don't know if the Department of Fisheries is still there, but this is one thing which it requires a lot of funds, and MPEDA has its sources, but I think there's more fund needs to be pumped into this. Secondly, the world, like BC and AD, today we are in business parlance, we are divided between post-COVID and pre-COVID. A lot of things have changed. The seafood trade also is fast changing. Every day there are new challenges. Every day there are jerks in production. There is slop in production. Markets change their color and nature every day. US is good today, is bad tomorrow. China is buying today, is not buying tomorrow. So under these circumstances, and as has already been emphasized, I think the domestic market is a major shock absorber. So I would once again like to emphasize here that all of us together need to look at the domestic market, see the nuances in the domestic market, see the behavior of the domestic market, and probably plan our future so that we have domestic market as a shock absorber, but we need to get our money, the foreign exchange, the prime prices. So we cannot overlook or look away with the exports. I think export is going to be one area which is going to take us forward in the seafood sector. So thank you so much, sir, and let us work together to for our fisher folks and for our farmers so that they thrive, they survive. And I also wish the very best of luck to Dr. Shekharan. She's in her own little way also is trying to get one more chapter of the industry to thrive. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Jagdish. This was a wonderful session, especially this particularly related to the seafood export, and not only seafood, I should tell the aquatic products export. All the lead speakers have given their valuable insights, starting from Mr. Ilyas Seth, Tarakan, Sunil Mohammed sir, and also we had the overseas speakers and many also. And the enlightened panelists have also given us very valuable inputs and key suggestions were given. And some of the key suggestions, I think we have to take it forward. For example, somebody has suggested for a center of excellence in value addition. That is a felt need of Ms. Taragan has suggested for a center of excellence in value addition. Because value addition is a key point because 10% hardly goes as value added product. Then also regarding the opportunities for reprocessing in all these things, there should be a concern. We should not harp on only just for value addition. There are other avenues are also. And domestic trade is a very important avenue because Mr. Ilyas Seth was telling that 30% of the shrimp can be absorbed in our domestic trade. So that is a very important opportunity. So all these things have, including Muslim Muhammad sir told about the certification, giving traceability and consumer confidence for our products. So we have to have a concerted effect, and I hope that the department will take a lead in this aspect with the support of the industry, academia, and the research institutions. So thank you all, and I also thank the Department of Fisheries for giving me an opportunity to chair this session. I thank all the lead speakers and the panelists for attending the session and all the audience. Thank you all. Thank you once again. Thank you.
Sir, we have mementos. Yeah. Mementos. How many? I request Director CFTT hand over the mementos to our speakers and panelists. Yeah. Just give one by one. One by Sir, yeah, right. Right. No, it's okay. No, I'm not telling that. Next. No, shortage होगा. Hey. That was my thing. Now, memento for chair.